One thing about me I think I've established over the years writing this blog is that I'm not the world's most enthusiastic or successful puzzle game player. I keep plugging away with them though, partly because I enjoy challenging myself, and partly because they're often nice interstitial games to spend a bit of time on between more intense entries on the blog. However, one thing I know that I crave is a good story, and in fairness, puzzle games aren't always known for caring about that. Every now and again though, a puzzler comes along with an honest-to-goodness actual narrative that pins it all together, and I suddenly find myself utterly absorbed. You're listening to the almighty Backlog. I'm Ellie, and today's review is on Viewfinder, available for PC, PS4, PS5, Switch, and Xbox Series XS. This review is based on the PC version. Originally released in July of 2023, developed by Sad Owl Studios and published by Thunderful, the genre is puzzle, and How Long to Beat has an average playtime of about 5 hours. The conflict, such as it is, at the core of Viewfinder is worryingly realistic. That's because Viewfinder is a game all about the effects of catastrophic climate change that unfolds on a world unable or unwilling to care enough about it to stop. The brief glimpses we get of the world outside are terrifying. Burning crimson skies cloak the day with a grim and forbidding light, while we scrabble around in dark black skyscrapers that point accusingly towards the thick clouds above. Far below, the streets are obscured by an opaque smog. Our characters don't even remotely discuss the possibility of venturing outside. Instead, the entire game takes place inside of a computer simulation. This isn't immediately apparent at the beginning of Viewfinder, since the idea of a puzzle game taking place literally in an abstract world isn't that far-fetched, but an early level begins to break down and you find yourself jolted out into the real world, which feels genuinely disorientating. The reason we're running around in this simulation is, however, fittingly dystopian. It was created by a small team of scientists from across multiple disciplines as a space to explore techniques for restoring plant life across the Earth. Turns out, unchecked global climate change is pretty lethal to flora. Who knew? Each of the game's chapters plays out in the personal playrooms of one of the researchers, focusing in on the type of work they were doing. We don't strictly interact with their work. Instead, we're kind of flitting through, dancing around their research and trying to get to their ultimate findings to learn if anything they did was of any use to our characters in the present day. Despite the beautiful environments, it makes for a bleak game. We know from our current predicament that the chances of finding something helpful are low, but that sense of desperate hope carries us through the levels. In particular, the interactions between the members of the original research team get increasingly prickly as their efforts fail to yield results, and the differing styles of research and attitudes begin to clash. It means that by the time our character comes across the simulation, it is an empty and near lifeless husk, filled with the digital detritus of a team long since broken down and abandoned. The only sign of life to be found is in the form of Kate, an artificial intelligence modelled after a cat, that speaks with a soothing Scottish brogue. As we make our way through the various levels of the simulation, Kate accompanies us, sharing tidbits about the research team and pondering our purpose in the echoing halls. There are some bits of the simulation's former inhabitants left behind though, in the form of video gaming's favourite after-the-moment form of information dispersal, audio logs. I find it a little frustrating that these are essentially optional bits of backstory that a player could feasibly miss as they scoot through the puzzles. This is mainly because the game doesn't make any effort to highlight that the gramophones dotted around the place are interactive lore dumps. The locales are so abstract and stuffed with random things that you can't interact with that the gramophones barely stand out, and by the time I'd gone near to one and seen a button prompt, I was a bit miffed that I was already several levels into the game and therefore missed some of the story. The way the puzzles work in Viewfinder is very mind-bendy, and I must say it's also not at all what I imagined the game was going to be. My assumption, based both on the name and the images of our character holding an old-style camera, was that Viewfinder's challenges were going to come from needing to line up parts of an environment to form or find some sort of hidden object or view. However, that's not quite how it functions. Instead, it's more about environmental manipulation to create traversable paths. It does this in a few ways, all of which I found very creative. An early level introduces us to the strange reality-altering properties of photographs in the simulation, when a black and white photo of a transporter station we come across can be placed onto the game world itself, superimposing a real version of that photo's contents into the world. These photos need to be lined up so that we can walk on their floors or climb their stairs, but they also can be turned over to form new pathways or find hidden objects, and they can also be used over and over again in their respective stages to create vast, lengthy pathways. Just be sure you don't overwrite the actual goal that you need to reach. What this means for us is that navigating Viewfinder requires some occasionally intense spatial awareness. Some levels don't have photos for us, but make us find an angle to form a specific view, which in turn superimposes into the simulation's reality, and a later chapter indeed gives us access to a camera, thus allowing us to create our own pictures to use that alter the shape of the stage as we fit. The only point of comparison I have for this, and it's not one I make lightly, I promise, is Valve's masterpiece Portal. In my opinion, Viewfinder taps into a very similar space as that game in that its environmental puzzling is extremely intuitive, and once you get into the flow, winds up feeling incredible to pull off. It rewards creative thinking, but also encourages you to linger a little and read into the game world to build an engaging and intriguing story that your character is merely piecing together. I think what really sold Viewfinder for me is the sheer amount of variation that the game introduces to its primary mechanic. Sometimes the game wants us to find ways to transmit sound or to activate doorways that present the same scene in different aesthetic styles that do or don't interact with each other. Much like Portal, there are even certain materials that neither our camera nor the reality overwriting ability of the photos can interact with, requiring us to find solutions that think around them. That creativity is frankly astounding. It would have been one thing for this game to simply be a good puzzle game, but that it's also got excellent environmental storytelling and a charming narrative companion in the form of Kate that helps flesh the world out is an extra joy. Our handler on the outside occasionally chirps up in our ear, allowing her to act as the voice for the desperation in the real world, urging us along to find out what this research team discovered and if any of it is of use. It's a marvellously effective combination of narrative input coming together to build a genuinely affecting story that is supported by innovative and exciting puzzle gameplay. I feel a little bit bad that I got the game for free off Epic in a way. To find a narrative puzzle game that sparked the same kind of joy as Portal was a real treat, and the team behind it ought to be recognised and their work recommended. The final score is 6 out of 7. Excellent. Games that have a touch of brilliance. It might only just miss out on being a favourite, but you should definitely play this. This has been Ellie on the Almighty Backlog. You can support this project by reading the review over on thealmightybacklog.wordpress.com or by listening to the pod review hosted on RSS and YouTube. Please feel free to follow me over on Mastodon, Blue Sky and or Backlog by following the links on the website. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can do so by donating via PayPal to thealmightybacklog@gmail.com or by hitting the donate button on the blog. Thank you for listening and have a lovely day.